One of the things I always say is that if this job is like a siphon on your internal fuel tank, which we all have an internal fuel tank, you have to spend your off duty time refueling. And your life outside the job matters because if your life outside of the job is good, it doesn't matter what happens at work, you're going to be okay. If there's no, here's our plan of attack, here's how we're going to get out of this. And so, and people just get scared, and rightfully so, because of course this is your livelihood, this is food on the table.
Hi, welcome to BLN. So I feel like there's some type of crisis going on in the departments all around the world, whether it be fire departments, police departments, nursing. And I don't think it's being talked enough. I think it goes deeper than just burnout. Today's guest is Dr. Tanya Glenn. She has been working with EMS first responders for a long, long time. I want to say decades at this point, right?
33 years.
33 years. She's worked with people that run into danger, and we are not supposed to be the ones that feel things, I think. At least that's the stigma. We're not supposed to be the ones that break. I think morale is collapsing around all departments, and I don't think most of us realize what's going on. So today I have Dr. Tanya Glenn. She's an expert on the subject and works very closely with a lot of us first responders, and I wanted to see what your thoughts were. Dr. Tanya Glenn, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So I want to start with something that might seem a little different. When people tell you that the morale is low, what do you think they're talking about? What are they saying? What are they trying to describe that are actually going through their heads?
It varies for everybody, but I do think that when people say that morale is low, there's a sense of uncertainty in the department that they work for, whether it's leadership issues or call volume or budget issues or politics. I feel like every time people say the morale is low, that they feel like their needs aren't being met and as employees, and they feel like there's a sense of uncertainty and maybe lack of direction. And I think for an employee who's experiencing all of that, there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of, where is this headed? Are we on this train that's heading off the tracks? Is the pendulum gonna swing, right itself? And so often when the morale is low and people are experiencing all of that, there's no sense of communication or direction from leadership. There's no, here's our plan of attack, here's how we're gonna get out of this. And so, and people just get scared, and rightfully so, because of course this is your livelihood, this is food on the table, this is your ability to bring up your children and your financial stability, and everything matters. So that's what I tend to see when people start talking about morale.
Okay, so more of the uncertainty of things for me would be, how do I put money how do I feed my family versus, it's like, yeah, I could see that.
I think
So,
that people like consistency. They like to know my income is this, my shifts are these, my the expectations are this, and they like to have a sense of stability and security. I think there's a lot of chaos in EMS and public safety, and there's a lot of chaos in people's public safety, people's personal lives. And I think that the one thing that they know, the one consistency is my shift, my partner, the calls, are the calls. But I think that people seek stability and consistency, and when that's not there, then their perception is that things are wrong, people are jumping ship, the morale is low, I don't know what to expect, and I don't know if I'm going to be okay.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I personally have been through some of that stuff in the past, and so I can definitely agree with all those things, because those were the things that I was fearing at the time. Um, how do you distinguish low morale from other things like burnout or just tiredness, exhaustion? Working for firefighters, CMS, police officers, they're up late hours in the night. Nurses working 12-hour shifts. With unending list of patients outside. How does it really different from those sensations, like from what burnout is to what low morale? Is there any difference between the two, or is it just one preceding the other?
The difference is for burnout, it's going to be like the compassion fatigue for the patients, like the grind of like call volume and being spit on and yelled at and puked on and fighting, And so, and you can have both, right? So if you look at the state of affairs in 2020, the summer of 2020, you had both. You had a lot of burnout because people were just being so just beaten and disrespected by the public. But that also then led to just low morale in general, especially in departments who weren't saying what people needed to hear. Like, we back you, we love you, we're going to get through this, do your jobs, we are going to support you. So the burnout's going to be just the exposure to trauma and suffering and just being abused, and then the morale is going to come from the employer who does not, the perception is not leading correctly or is not backing them. I remember when I was at Brackenridge, I started it at Brackenridge Hospital in 92, got back from Oklahoma City bombing in 95, and I was burned out, right? I was really struggling with burnout. And then that point, after about a year later, is when Del Seaton took over, and I really loved being a City of Austin employee. And so some of the changes that Seaton started to make, kind of like, that was the low morale. I didn't like some of the philosophy that they brought, and I didn't like some of the changes that they brought. And I loved working for the City of Austin. And so there you could see, like, first it was the patients and the volume and going to Oklahoma City bombing and just kind of struggling with burnout. And then you tagged on the morale, and it's kind of a double whammy when you've got both going on, because you not only are feeling frustrated with the public and unhappy about how you're treated by a lot of the public, but then if there's no department backing or sense of, no matter what happens to you, we're going to back you and we're going to take care of you, if you don't have that, then you're just floundering.
Yeah, I can see that, how they compiled on each other. They're just on one side you're burning out because of the stress of the job, and then the other one you don't feel supported, so therefore it kind of creates a double whammy effect, and it kind of knocks you down. I experienced that back in 2014. I was still in Austin. I've since have come back to Austin. I think how things have gotten much better from back then, but I remember I was very, very burnt out at the time. We had a different schedule. I was not sleeping. I've never really drank or anything like that, so I don't do any of those stuff. But my only out was exercising, like working out. But because I was so tired, I was putting it in back. It always came second. And then I think, look how you were explaining, the department in itself was a different department back then, and I didn't feel supported. So it was the first thing that I could do is like, well, let me get out. Let me find something else. And I did, and it was great. And I'm back because life. I can definitely understand that sentiment.
It's interesting how you needed to leave and come back to get to that
Yes,
point, right?
yes. It's interesting because I was 34 when I left the department the first time, and I came back when I was 40. And I kind of talked about it in one of the other podcasts. I feel like I have grown a whole lot more in my head. Like, my family life is exceptional. I cannot be more grateful of my family. Just in and out, just to the in-laws, to everything. And then I have a really good supportive system here at home. So when I come home, I feel like it's nothing, oh, there's another stress that I need to take on. It's more like I can relax. I have my gym here at home, so no matter if it's going to be freezing outside or something like that, I can still go out there and hit some weights. And I do notice a difference when I lift versus when I don't lift in my mental state. And I prioritize sleep, even when I can. Like, one of the podcasts that I want to do in the future, I don't know if you've heard of NSDR. It's a non-sleep deep rest. It's a form of meditation. Dr. Huberman talks about it on one of his podcasts. But it's supposed to replenish neurologically some type of sleep. So you concentrate on different parts of the body as you're meditating while you're asleep, while you're awake. And it could be 10, 20 minutes on headphones. And I actually tracked it on my watch, and it showed that I had my stress levels reduced, and I felt less tired even after those 10 minutes. So for me, when I was working Medic 6 or Medic 1 downtown, and it was grueling nonstop calls, I would get the 10 minutes, put my headphones on, and that would help. So I think I've implemented a lot of the things in my life through
Yeah.
research, reading, podcasts that have helped me out a lot, at least with myself. Sorry,
Yeah.
I know we went
Yeah.
off on a tangent there. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But what you just described there, when we teach trauma and resilience, and we talk about like burnout and things like that, one of the things I always say is that if this job is like a siphon on your internal fuel tank, which we all have an internal fuel tank, you have to spend your off duty time refueling. And your life outside the job matters, like having the family squared away, loving, caring, good family, good relationships, working hard on your marriage, working hard on raising your kids, paying your bills, exercising, getting rest, prioritizing rest. Like all of that matters, because if your life outside of the job is good, it doesn't matter what happens at work, you're going to be okay. And I say that all the time. And I'm so happy you said that, because that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like everything you do off duty matters.
Yeah, I agree. And it's stuff that I didn't do before. I didn't prioritize it, and now I do, and I see the difference. It could also be because I'm 45, and back then, I'm like a whole lot older, so like things don't phase me as much as they used to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I blame that I'm the last Gen X person, generation. But who knows? So I do notice something that when I'm not talking when I'm in the field, I do notice that morale at least seems to be hitting people that are old. Talking about old age, it does seem to be hitting people that are older. They've been 10, 15, 20 years in the field, and it's a little bit less than the younger generation that is coming in. Is this something that they need to know, that they don't know what they signed up for yet, or is this something just generational, just because of the amount of trauma that one has seen in the past? Is there a difference between that, and what can the younger generation do to kind of prevent morale burnout or morale degradations?
I think that the older crowd, right, the ones who've been around here for a long time, I think that sometimes when the pendulum swings and things seem worse, like trucks are shut down or those types of things, or there's too much overtime or there's not enough overtime, and they've been through it in the past, I think for them, they just kind of they take it very personally because they've been around. And if you're at 20 years, you're probably heading down the stretch to stay till retirement. A lot of the younger folks are very much like, and I hear this a lot, working in a city like Austin, I'm going to get my time here and then I can go anywhere. And so there's less investment, right? So when there's less psychological investment and emotional connection to a workplace, then there's less of a kick to the morale. But if you've been here a long time and you truly care about this and you're trying to head down to that finish line of retirement to get a certain amount of years, and things aren't going well, and you've been through it in the past and the pendulum swings, but a lot of times I think that it's very hard not to take it personally. It's very hard to think, oh, here we go again. I thought we learned from this the last time. Here we are making the same dumb mistakes, right? Here we are with the same politics, the same BS going on. And so I think having like lived through it, sometimes it's very hard to live through it again.
Okay, that makes sense. I see what you mean. So, for example, like somebody that's been here 20 years, it's almost like family. You're messing with my family when you're messing with morale. So
Right.
therefore, I take it personally, just like if you're messing with my kids, versus somebody that's newer. It's more, I got 30 years to retirement. Who knows if I'm gonna retire? I'm just passing through to get to the next level. I could see how that could affect. I know I could see how that could affect me if I thought about it that way. Um, that's interesting.
Yeah. Like if you think back to when you were 22, if you were here at this department and you were 22 years old, what is your thought process? It's like, well, if I don't like this, I'll just go somewhere else. Like, I'll get 5, 6 years on the streets here, and then anybody's going to hire me because of my experience, right? And so,
Yes.
or it's like I'll just stay till I'm paramedic, and have 2 years on the streets as a medic, and then I can go anywhere as a paramedic. Like there's but you take that same 22-year-old and now they're 42 or 45 or 50, and there's an investment, right? And it's personal.
Yeah, I could see that. I would not definitely. I left in 14 when I was 35. I would not leave again because I feel like okay, now I'm 10 years total with the department. I don't want to. I'm 15 years to retirement. This is home for the long haul. Versus I'm
Right.
not looking. It's harder to look as I get older to. Oh well, I could just go fly again, or the hospital seems like a good idea. Which the
Yeah.
hospital brings another problem. Is like they're. I really feel for those nurses in the ERs because having worked there, it taught me that I do not want to be a nurse. I know we complain sometimes that we have it bad here, but they are nonstop grueling 12 hours on their feet, being, you know, kind of getting some of the worst stuff that we bring them over.
Absolutely.
Do you think there's signs for morale? I know there's signs for burnout and other stuff. Do you think there's signs for morale? Like, what does it look like when you start noticing within yourself, or you feel like your morale is starting to slip, even before people even put a name on it? Like, oh, I was a little bit ruder with it, because I know for burnout, it's like I'm starting to see I'm a little grumpier with patients, right? So it's like I can kind of tap myself and pull back, and it's like, okay, you're working too much. Is there such a thing for like morale that you can kind of watch out for if you're feeling like you're headed that way?
Yeah, I think it's when we get in that easy loop to get in of just constantly complaining about how the departments run, the leadership, the politics, and then what happens, and everybody does this, but first responders especially do this, is they start to like go through all the possible scenarios of whatever, city council meeting is coming up, or decision is being made, or budget plans being released, and you go through all, like, down the rabbit holes of all the possibilities, or who's getting promoted, or what might happen on a shift bid, and if this person goes to this truck and this, it's going to suck, and it's so, like, it is so easy to do that. But those are it's morale's going to be always the work related stuff, and it does, in a way, it sounds a little bit like burnout, but it's just that sort of cyclical thinking of all the possibilities of all the things that are going to go wrong, or all of the just kind of the griping about all of the things that people disagree with, and that's the morale. I think that a lot of times what will happen, like at Austin EMS, is that there's a lot of griping to commanders. There's a lot of questions that commanders can't ask. There's a lot of over and over, sort of like when we are afraid, when we don't know what an outcome is going to be or what our future looks like, we'll ask the same question over and over again, hoping for some semblance of an answer. And that may be something that, and the commanders are like, I don't know why these people ask me the same things over and over again. I just don't know. But what we're looking for is some deviation in your response, so we can then get an answer. And it's fear-based, right? And it's really, it's a tough time when that pendulum swings towards the lower morale and things being less good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I could see that. I have a question, and this is something that I kind of figured out kind of later in life. I used to think that my job, my identity, my personal identity was Raul is a paramedic for the city of Austin. Raul is a flight paramedic for San Antonio Airlife. I attributed my worth to my job identity. And it wasn't until, I'm very, very thankful for my family, because my wife came and told me, it's like, hey, your legacy is not the job. Your legacy is your family, what you leave behind. Those are the people that are going to show up at the end. And until it clicked, I think that was the moment that I actually started changing and became a lot happier with myself and content with what I had going on in my life. What role does identity play in somebody else's morale? Like especially when it's low. I feel like sometimes when I see people, I noticed that when they were like extremely good at their job, and then I noticed that the morale is low and they seem to be a little bit less compassionate, less forthcoming with patients. Do you think that has a lot to do with it, or is there anything that impacts that with identity?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, Raul, and it's so easy to slip into this, then when your identity is that you are, this paramedic, police officer, flight medic, right? And it's so easy to see yourself that way and to conceptualize yourself that way. But when you do, and kudos to your wife for pointing out what your true legacy is, right? But when people, their identity is just so wrapped up in what they do, and then things are not good, right? It's like a blow to your psyche. It's like, well, this is who I am, but I can't change what's happening around me, and I can't change what the department is doing, even though I express my opinion. It absolutely, and then of course when that happens, so the ding happens and your identity is questioned, or maybe it falters a little bit, then what happens is your performance does decrease, right? Your patient care, your treatment of the public, your level of patience, with people on their worst days. And so, any department that is knowingly putting people out there with low morale, you should expect them to be rude to the public, and you should expect them to struggle with, how well they do, and and their sense of motivation, right? How quickly they get out of the truck and grab,
Yeah.
all the bags, all the heavy bags, right? And how quickly they run through that front door. Everything is impacted. And I mean, down to like minute things like that, like how quickly you exit your vehicle. It's going to impact when people feel good, when they feel backed, when they feel strong in what they do. They're going to do better. I do, though, encourage people to really not make the job their identity, because when you retire, what do you have left, right? So that is a very dangerous thing to have perpetually, and especially as you go towards the end of your career, because you want to be you versus what you do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I talked to Walt on my last guest podcast, and he just retired, a few years back, and he said that I think one of the things is like that's one of the struggles that he mentioned. It's like, who am I now that I'm not this? He found his way, and he found his meaning again, I think. But is something definitely that I'm scared of when I get older, and when it's my time to hang up the stethoscope. But it's yeah, I think it's important. Going with that theme, you're being asked to show up every day. You want to, even when low morale is low, but they're still demanding of you. And then there might be somebody that's taking it at least less hard than you. It's really hard to stop comparing yourself against others. I know, at least I used to do that when, like, I need to be the better medic, I need to be the better person, I need to be this. How come they have it so easy and I'm struggling so hard? And it's nothing personal against anybody else. It's just how. What's a good way to stop comparing yourself to somebody else's struggles that they might be going on because they have it worse or because they have it easy? Or is there such a thing, you think?
Yeah, I think it's human nature, to do that. I think that the best thing we do to work through that and to be productive about that is to know that people have it worse, right? And to count our blessings. I think that, counting our blessings, being and having gratitude for things is very, very beneficial. And I think that a lot of times, what gets us through is the people who have it worse, right? The people who have bigger struggles, sometimes you'll run a call, you'll be having a bad day, and you pick up a patient or you're dealing with their family members, and you're like, my
Yeah.
problems are not that bad, right? And I think the best approach to kind of get out of that mindset is to find gratitude and to find, I mean, I think human beings, we all compare, right? We all look at each other and compare, but how we get through that is to really kind of realize sometimes the gravity of our situation isn't near as bad as we think it is.
Yeah, I agree with that. I often tell my kids this. One of the biggest hacks, it is for me at least, has been to be completely expressively forgiving to yourself when it comes to anything that you do, because people are going to judge, people are going to do this, people are going to, it'll make it easier for you to compare yourself against others, but because you're holding yourself to a higher standard that you don't think that it's attainable. But if you're completely forgiving to yourself to the extreme, then anything that I make that's wrong, then I can just put it past me and I don't have to think about it and move on. And that's what I'm trying to pass on. Just I heard that in somebody's podcast. I can't remember who, but it really resonated with me when I heard that, because it was like, yeah, that's true. Like, I made a lot of mistakes in the past, whether at work or somebody else, somewhere. I forgave myself fairly quickly on it and moved on. Versus it didn't stay in my head and ruminate. So going to the comparison thing, like, I know that even if I find myself comparing myself to somebody else because I think they have it better, then I need to be more forgiving of myself. It's like, no, you have it good too. You don't need to be certainly read these expectations, So something that I kind of learned along the way. Going back to what you were talking about, it's the departments or the employers. I don't want to say departments because this is more general, but let's say when employers have a responsibility, what is it that they can, what are some well-intended responses that they actually think make things worse? I'm thinking here pizza parties.
Yeah, I was going to say pizza parties.
Yes, it's like, oh, morale is low, just throw them pizza.
Yes, here you go.
Does that work?
No. Yeah, Yeah, that's
What are some?
typically there's a sense of like, we'll just throw something at it, right? Just to slap some sort of a something on there. And it just doesn't work, right? I think people want to know that there's a plan in place or there's a plan being developed and here's where we're headed and here's the goals for next year's budget or here's what this looks like. Like they need that. They don't need pizza parties.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is, so the pizza parties are nice for the moment. They're more like a band-aid, but the true responsibility comes in true communication and expectation. Even if it's bad, I would say that even if it's bad, I would think I would be okay with it. So if somebody came to me at work and told me that, okay, three, the next year is going to be, overtime is going to be short and we're going to have to not put any trucks, but this is a plan where this is what we want to do ahead of that.
Right.
I think that for me would work a whole lot better. Hey,
Yes.
trust in the plan, they're being communicative versus you just making me fat with some pizzas.
Right, exactly, exactly. I was working with a hospital, not in Texas, and they were trying to address morale. And their solution was they came up with a smile campaign. And I asked them, like, what is the smile campaign? And they're like, well, like on our screensavers on our computers, we changed it all to the word smile. And we have some posters that say smile. And I was like, well, how's that different than a pizza party? It's just there's no calories. I was shocked and blown away that that was their answer for morale. And if you
Wow.
ask any nurse in that hospital, what would improve your morale? Staffing, right? Consequences for patients who abuse them. You know, like, you know, staffing. Like
Yeah, staffing.
make it happen, right? Support back, show that you care about these nurses instead of like just grinding them into the ground.
Yeah.
Like offer real solutions, right? Here's our hiring goal for next year. Here's what we're going to do in terms of our travel nurses. Here's what we're going to do to, we are going to start to prosecute or pursue charges against violent patients who attack you, and we are going to let the patients know that they will be prosecuted. Like, just come up with some tangible things instead of like a screensaver on a computer that says smile. Like, are you kidding? I mean, and trust, if there's no faster way to piss off a bunch of nurses, it's to do that.
Yeah, tell them
And
to
I'm
smile.
really blown away that that was their answer. But you know what? Any program that says, here's where we are, here's our goal, here's our budget goal, here's our staffing goal, the amount of trucks we're going to have on the streets. Here's, our hiring, however many academies we're going to add to last year's academies so we can bump it by two or three, just something tangible. And I feel like that has to be, because you know what? You all are smart people, and you know when you're kind of being placated and BS'd, and you know when a plan is true and valid. And so your meters are very, very efficient.
Yeah, the BS meters run high and
Yeah.
first responders, I think. Do you
Yes.
think it needs to come from the top, or do you feel like is it something that could be trickled down? As in, for example, my commanders tell me that this is the plan, but it's just in a meeting, or do you feel it needs to come from the highest priority? Like, would it be better to hear it from like the person in charge, or from just people that he's over, and then just hear it from your direct supervisor? Is that, or is there a difference?
Yeah. Well, I think it's more believable if it's coming from consistently messaging is coming from everybody, from the top down to your commander or your that level of supervisor. So, but it comes from the top. When 9/11 happened and they created DHS and then they created CBP, one of my customers is Air and Marine Operations, and they're within CBP. But there was a point where they were kind of like being tossed between ICE and CBP and back and forth, and then there was rumors they were going to just go away, that they were going to disband that portion, and they used to be called like Legacy U.S. Customs. And there were multiple offices, and I was doing a bunch of site visits and I went to one of the offices, and the highest morale during this very turbulent time for this organization had a director who gave a lot of time and a lot of effort to communication. It was like a weekly summary, even if it was there's no change from last week, he would
Hmm.
communicate that, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
And yeah, and those folks, and this branch was in New Mexico. Those folks had the highest morale of any office that I visited across the southern border, and it was because his ability and willingness to spend time updating. Here's where we're headed. Here, this is a rumor. This is what we're striving for. And consistently. And then some weeks there's no changes to last week's update. But you know what? People, they took that and they were like, okay. And so they knew what they had, like, there was a plan in place and it was working or deviating or changing or staying or whatever. And they loved it. And so but it came from the director level. And so not the layers below him. And it was really effective.
I could see that, and especially like I think for me, it would be okay. It was like there's no changes, even if it's a negative meeting. At least we're hearing from you,
Yeah.
and we know what's going on, and at least the plan that you have in place is somewhat working, but or it's not working, but you're letting us know that it's not working at this time,
Right.
and then we're moving forward to correct the issues. I
Right.
could see how that could be very beneficial because I don't
Right.
think I've ever had a boss like that.
Hmm. Yeah. And even like the messaging coming from the top, if there's a setback, is there something the union can do to start to put the pressure to to overcome the setback? Because I mean, there's a lot of people who are very motivated to salvage this department. And so if there's a setback, it's city council or mayor, whatever, blah, 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 politics, then the union maybe has a little bit of pull somewhere or something that they can do, right? Or they can spin up the media to put the pressure to help deviate back to where we were versus where this kind of is going off the rails. And so I feel like, with people who care about this department, they're going to do things to make sure that things are that we're on the right track and we're staying on the right track. And if we're getting off track, what are we going to do?
Yeah, try to put the how do we put this back on the rails?
Yeah.
Um, what so let's say the department that you work for is not doing those things. It's not it's just throwing you pizza parties and all the time and expecting things to change or telling you to smile, and you see that there's no true change from the leadership to make things change. For those that are at themselves in that situation, what can I do individually to to not regress or to not have those to not how do I keep my own morale up when
Mm-hmm.
everything else is failing and the system isn't changing? Is there anything I can do personally to accommodate that?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times when people come to therapy about stuff like this, we really work on how much power you give your employer or certain organizations, how much power you give them over you. And I always tell people, if you in your off-duty time, you go home and you gripe continuously about your organization, it's like you're swallowing the poison pill, right? Anger is the poison pill, and they win. They win. If all of your off-duty time is spent just ruminating about how angry you are or venting to your family till they're just like, I don't want to hear it anymore. Like, the agency is winning, but they don't win in your life. You win in your life. And so it's about that. Basically, it's an emotional boundary that we help our patients set up to not be so impacted so negatively, because that's just raising your cortisol, right? That's just creating all this stress that you then carry around, and it's in your shoulder, or it's on your mind, and it's impacting your mental health, and is it increasing your anxiety, or is it exacerbating your depression? All of that stuff, the lack of leadership, that's winning in your life, and you win in your life. And so it's really about self-care, boundaries, and balance. And when you start to like implement those things, you start to really get a good sense of like, okay, I'm going to talk to my partner about it when I'm on duty, but boy, when I leave, I'm done. I'm done for the next, however many days you have off. I'm done. And I'm not taking this home. I'm not going to ruminate on it. I'm not going to worry about it. I choose to live my life for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those are great. I do a lot of those myself too. Like So yeah, I think those work really well. So anybody listen, I hope that helps. So that if you find yourself in that situation, that they can find themselves and not be, lost to the morale monster. If someone listening as a paramedic or a firefighter, but they feel like disengaged at work or in their life, what still applies here, and what is more universal about the whole topic of morale? I don't know if that makes sense.
So
Um,
if they feel disengaged in their life or at
yeah,
work,
yeah,
yeah.
or both. Uh, like, what about morale can apply to all of this stuff
Yeah, I think my
universally?
first question to someone who brought that to me in therapy, I would ask them like, well, how much is the low morale at the department or your low morale at your department? How much of that is carrying over into your personal life? And we when we start to build resilience in people, we start very simple, like hydration, nutrition, rest, exercise, like adding hydration, 8 ounces of water to your day every day for the first week, and then 16 ounces, and more sleep and exercise, and people start to feel better, and then they start to engage in other activities like their life outside the job. And so I feel like it all does kind of ball together, whether it's just exhaustion or burnout or low morale. And we don't necessarily have to like pull it all apart and figure out which causes what. It's really about stabilizing someone's life and getting them sort of re-engaged in their life and starting to enhance their resilience. I mean, low morale clearly from our conversation, it comes home, it impacts people, and when you realize like, wow, this is like this burden that I carry with me all the time, and then you realize you're just kind of done with it and you start to let that go. It's very empowering.
Yeah, definitely. I think I kind of touched on this a little bit, but how does somebody that has the morale, how do they rebuild their morale without having to quit? So, or changing careers. Like, I know it bit me back in 2014 when I left the first time. I said the first time when I left back then, because my morale was low. I was like, I just need a change. I need to move from this because this is not going anywhere. And I left. Since then, things changed, came back. I feel pretty good about where I'm at in life. But somebody that's listening, that's kind of right there. Is there a way to come back from that without having to give up what you're doing now?
Yeah, I would say that it's going to be addressing your burnout, hydration, nutrition, rest, exercise, your family, your faith, your friends, your hobbies, your life outside the job, right? I also think that it's things like, for example, getting away from like medic 6 or medic 1, where you're just getting pounded. I do think it matters like what shift you're on, who your partner is, whether it's law enforcement, fire, EMS, who you're around. Like, are you around people who just constantly gripe and complain, or are you around people who are like, well, let's go have a great shift? And this is the only thing we can control is like we're going to go support each other, and we're going to do the best we can for the public and our patients and stuff like that. It's how your partner speaks really matters. If they are if they are constantly griping, that's more energy of siphoning out of your internal fuel tank. And so I think that everything matters. And when I always tell people, when you start to make small changes, it pays off big. So with the resilience, the hydration, nutrition, rest, exercise, family, faith, friends, hobbies, when you make small changes, it pays off big. When maybe you shift bid, or you go to a different shift, and or you bid on a different partner, or you're a firefighter, you maybe just end up like on a different truck or a different station. It matters, right? I know. And I mean, I have one customer, it's a fire department, and it's been the same crew at the same station forever, and they won't leave each other because it's
Well,
good, because they love each other and they support each other, and it's positive, and nobody wants to leave, so there's never a vacancy at this
at that
because
station.
they're not going. And wow, how great is that, right? And so I do think that it's everything that you're taking in. I know, if you're a first responder and you're married to another first responder or healthcare worker, it's, kind of limiting the amount of time you guys gripe at home about work and let that sort of fester. You know, all of that matters. But again, small changes start to pay off big. And so that way you don't have to leave. You went to a great organization, you came back, I love
Yeah,
that.
no,
But you don't want to leave, right? Yeah.
no, I don't.
Mhm.
With that, I left to go because I wanted to fly. I had the
Yeah.
itching of going to fly, and I went and I did it, and it worked out well for a while. And then life happens, and end up leaving because it's dangerous, and there's like, okay, well, we almost crashed this time, and we almost crashed this other time. And it's
Yeah.
like, I want to come home.
Yeah.
So it was a harsh reality for me. It's very
Mhm.
glorious to go do that, but at the end of the day, my time in Austin has been pretty good. Even back then when it was bad, it was pretty
Mhm.
good. And
Mhm.
I've been back for 5 years, and it's been pretty good too. And I think I find myself being, like I said earlier, I find myself being different because I think I'm a different person than I was back then. Everything
Mhm.
that I've learned, everything that I've read, everything that I've consumed and detached from has made me better. Um, I wanted to ask this question because you mentioned it. Like, I know your partner and the people that you work for with are imperative to
Mhm.
how the rest of your career goes, or at least the part where you're with them. I'm lucky enough that I have a good team right now in my shift. We all get along. There's no drama. Like, I would wish we could. I hope that it stays like this for a long time. So because of the same thing that you said, it's like this is a good group. But I occasionally, whenever I work on the trucks now, I can work with different people because I'm just floating. And there'll be that negative person that all they do is griping. And they have a partner. And that partner is probably listening to the same stuff that I'm hearing. How would that partner approach their negative partner in a positive manner so that it doesn't create too much conflict, but it creates more resolution and kind of they can both evolve from that so that they can establish that more warm, less negative relationship? Or is it possible to do that?
Ooh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. You have to know your partner and know kind of how to approach them. I mean, obviously, that is if you don't know somebody well enough, it could backfire and they could really like be like, "Well, everything's daisies and ponies for you apparently," and then they just keep going, right? But I do think that once you have rapport with someone, you can have a conversation that sounds something like, "Hey, I know that you're angry about a lot of things here, and I am too. But when we talk about it all the time, it's like it's just pulling from my energy, and I feel like by the end of the shift, we're so out of energy anyway. Like I want to talk about other things. Like I want you to tell me about your life, not your anger at this place. I want to know you." And so maybe it starts like that way. It's a kind conversation, but it's one that kind of says, you know, the I'm with you on a lot of this, but I just don't want to talk about it because it just drags me down. But tell me about your spouse. Tell me about your kids. You have a kid in competitive cheerleading. I do too. And then there's a whole discussion that can happen for
On
days
that.
on that, right? How much money you spend. But that to me is kind of a gentle way to do it. And the person will deviate back towards the griping because they're so used to that. But and maybe you get to a point where you have enough rapport that you can joke about it. Be like, hey, okay, so we're gonna gripe for 20 minutes today, and that's it.
Yeah, you,
And
you
then you
get
make it a
5 gripes a
goal.
day, and then you count
Yes,
them down. It's like, sorry,
right.
you're out of gripes for today at 3 o'clock in the morning.
No more, no more.
That's
We're
chill.
out.
I like that.
But you can't if you have enough rapport with the person to do that. Because it that could really backfire.
Yeah, it can. I know that I used to do this. I used to do this with like bosses when I started, and it's something that I've always done. But I like to ask whenever I'm working. I have a new manager, and now it's more partners because I don't see my managers directly that much. But one of the first things that I like to ask is, "Hey, man, how do I disagree with you? Like, how do I approach you?" So, for me, it was kind of the same thing. Like, it gave me an outing or like an understanding of how to approach them. It's like, hey, let's say we're in a truck and you're doing something and I don't like that you're gonna give that medication or that you're drawing it or that you're heading this direction. How do I approach you so that I don't piss you off, but also we can move forward? And it usually works out pretty well. Like I feel I've always been positive. The response has always been positive because they're like, well, don't tell me right then. I want to hear it later, or no, you can tell me right now because that way I need to learn. Or sometimes I'd be like, no, you don't tell me what to do, and it would stop there. But for the most part, it's been pretty receptive. So that's something that I use. I don't know if that's something that you think would be useful for other people
Oh, I
as
think
well.
that is amazing. That is such a great question. That is such a great question, right? Because look at the amount of conflict that happens when you are in the back and your partner's pushing something and you're like, no, I don't think you should do that. And then it explodes, right? Either during transport or at the hospital. But having that conversation ahead of time, how do I disagree with you is such a great question and great way to communicate with someone. If things are going wrong, what's the expectation?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
I've always found it useful, especially with bosses, because that way I don't, you know, I learned the hard way because I think I pissed off a boss one time because I approached it. I tend to be mouthy sometimes, according to my family. So, and opinionated sometimes. So that actually helped me out a lot back then. Okay, the next section, it's kind of inspired from Tim Ferriss. I kind of modified some of his questions. I don't know if you ever read Tool of Titans or Tribe of Mentors from Tim Ferriss. He recently writes questions for other people to answer, and I've kind of modified them to kind of hit what we're talking about here. So let's see. It's just like 5. So what belief about morale or mental toughness or resilience do you think we fundamentally get wrong?
I think that we fundamentally get wrong is that we start to believe that we can't change our morale, our resilience, that it's permanent, it's set, and that we can't change it. I think that's the biggest mistake.
That we can't change it.
That we cannot
Yeah.
change it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that we cannot do anything about it. And we get that helplessness. I think that is the number one mistake is that people start to believe that nothing will change.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. Because you can, just like anything else. What question do you wish people asked you more often? Like, what conversations are we not having that we should be?
I think that okay, I'm going to kind of give a modified answer. I wish that people, first responders, would come to therapy preventatively. Some of them do, but the majority come in when it's a dumpster fire. Like it's a dumpster fire and everything's going wrong. That's when they come to therapy. I wish people would just come preemptively and get established and work on their resilience from the very beginning. So I think I think the question would be like, when should I enter therapy? And I'd say right away.
Now,
Yes.
like therapy now, therapy yesterday.
Yes.
Uh, what is one book that you gift the most?
That I gift the most. I gift a book called The Gift of Fear, which is about your instincts and your intuition and trusting those instincts and intuition, why we have them and how we use it correctly. And not it's all about how not to override your instincts and how to stay safe.
Okay. I'm gonna make sure I get that one.
It's a good one.
What is something that you wish somebody entering the field of first responders, nurses, paramedics would know that you could teach them, like something that they don't know that they would just get immediately so they could have a better life?
I think that the thing I wish I could teach them is balance. You know, when you come to this, you're so excited and you just want to run calls and help people, and I wish we could insert a sense of wisdom, understanding how the job can really chew you up and spit you out. Because I think that the day that happens for people is very hard. I wish we could share the wisdom in a way like we could insert a feeling inside of them that to know what's coming.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Okay, one last thing, and then I'll stop taking your time. If there's somebody listening right now who's exhausted or who's been like running on empty for a long time, who feels like they're failing because they used to care and now they're not sure anymore, what do you want them to hear right now?
I would say that you are normal, that we all go through this, that you are valued and loved, and because you're valued and loved, to start to invest in yourself by good self-care. Even if you don't want to come to therapy, it just starts with taking a walk, getting rest, getting hydrated, those types of things. But I would tell somebody who feels that way, because when you feel that way, it's like you feel like there's a big mountain you have to climb to get better, but it actually is that very small changes start to pay off big, but you're not alone.
Awesome. That's great advice. Where can people find you, Dr. Glenn? Like, where can they find you? Where can they find therapy? We're talking about therapy right now. Where can we find you to go see you? Like, where can
Yeah.
people reach you?
So our website is Tanya, Tania, Glenn with 2Ns.com. And that's got the office information on there. You just call the office, leave a message. We call you back right away. I got a great team. And our offices, we have Seguin and Cedar Park. And
Oh, you're in Seguin now? I didn't know you were in Seguin.
yeah, got a great office in Seguin with two very, very amazing, talented, sweet, beautiful therapists. So yeah, they're amazing. One came on board with me in the height of COVID, and the other is a former medic in the Air Force, and they're delightful. So I'm really, really proud of that Seguin office. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, I might have to go check it out
Yeah.
for myself. Um, okay, well, thank you, Dr. Glenn. I appreciate your time. I think this was a great conversation. Like, I think a lot of people will actually get a lot from it. Uh, but I appreciate you being here. Is what I'm trying to
Oh
say.
my gosh, thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me. I appreciate it. I
Maybe
appreciate
we'll
it.
do this again some other time.
Would love
We'll talk
to.
about different subjects. Thank you so much.
Thank you.